One of my friends recently sent me a build and he said, yo, try this. And I was like, okay, I don't know what this is, so we're going to have a look at it. It's a giant axe. It's called the Rotten Greataxe, and we're using an Ash of War called Lion's Claw that is allowing us to do this like somersault spin attack, which can, as you can see, do a lot of damage. It also does a ton of stagger damage. You run up to an enemy, you do the Ash of War, boom, enemy's down, you just go to wherever their shiny little yellow spot is, and you just crit them. Because that's something I do now. I crit people, because I didn't before. Now I do. Are you guys happy? Are you happy I'm doing enough crits? Is this enough crits for you people? All joking aside, the weapon's great, but I feel like it's slower for faster enemies, so I do have a secondary weapon, the Magma Blade, that I whip out at last second to deal with any enemies that are a little too fast for my liking. So in general, when you run up to an enemy, you do the Lion's Claw or maybe even a heavy charged attack, and you should have the enemy down in literally about 2 to 1 hits. And then you can get a nice easy crit off of them, and then you can play from there. Now, because we're trying to get a lot of damage with this weapon, you can use things like the incantation Flame Grant Me Strength, which gives us a boost to our damage. You can also have a secondary weapon like the Golden Hellbore to use the Golden Vow, or maybe the Rallying Standard weapon, so that you can get a huge amount of damage for a few seconds, so that you can, like, you know, take on your enemies for these clean shots here, so that these numbers can be almost double as high. It just is a lot of effort to do that. For in general, most of the weaker enemies in this game, you'll probably just shred like this. It's probably really good for PvP, which my friend does a lot of PvP, so I'm probably sure he showed me that for that reason. You can see here, the clean knights are a joke, because if you get a clean hit on them, they just get smacked. Like, watch the second dude here. Watch when I hit him with Lion's Claw. It's going to smash his face into the floor, and then you can just do it again, or whatever you want. They're just easy to deal with when you do that. Now, I do have my other hand open, and this means we have an incantation, and we're going to be doing, like, bestial incantations. So you can see here we're using Beast Claw and things like that to mess with the enemy's flow, and you can you know, surprise them with that. You can also obviously use a bunch of different, you know, incantations as well with this. So the build works out with the Rotten Greatsword. You can see I've got it with the Cold affinity. I'm going to talk about some of the affinities shortly after this, but you can see our stats here are majorly leaning into Dexterity, some Faith. The Faith is just to get like the incantations and buff those a little bit so that they can do a little bit more damage. Otherwise, if you don't want that, you can go full on into Dexterity, maybe even some Strength if you want to try a different weapon or swap like between multiple weapons within the same build. Our secondary weapon here is the Magma Blade. Now, this weapon isn't too hard to equip. The attributes required are quite low and easy to go, and it also works with some of the stats that we already have, the Faith, the Dexterity, and some of the Strength, so it's fantastic as a secondary weapon. Then we have the Clawmark Seal, which boosts our bestial incantations, which we were using earlier, just as a finger seal to cast spells. You can use different ones with different spells. It's up to you on how you change the build in that way. For our helmet, we have the Mushroom Crown, which boosts our attack damage based on whether there is rot or poison nearby, and that's something I'm going to be talking about a little bit sooner. And if you look at all the other armor pieces, these are the other armors I'm wearing in case you're interested in wearing those or interested in the set in general. For the talismans, we have the Shard of Alexander that greatly boosts the attack power of our skills, which obviously works for Lion's Claw, which is fantastic. Then we have the Dagger Talisman that enhances our critical hits, since we do that a lot. And then we have the Kindred of Rot's Exaltation, which, when poisoning or rot is in the vicinity, increases our attack power. This is the same thing that the Mushroom Crown does. Then we have the Magic Scorpion Charm that raises the magic attack, and this does work for Lion's Claw, I believe, so that's quite great. Along with the Wondrous Physic that temporarily makes enemies' stances easier to break, which is great because this weapon already does a ton of poise damage, as well as a temporary boost to magic attacks in general. Now, if we go and sit at a Site of Grace and we go to the Ash of War, as you can see, the Ash of War that we have here is the Lion's Claw Ash of War. Right now, we have it on the cold version, so if we go in here and we look at the affinities, and this can change how the weapon plays entirely. So what I have here is Cold, which increases our frost buildup with the weapon by a lot. We can also go into Blood if you want to put more Arcane into the build and have blood loss. Alternatively, you could go into Poison, which I think might be one of the better options, actually. So Poison, along with Rot, when we apply these to our enemies, we increase our attack power based on our talisman, as well as the Mushroom Crown helmet that we're wearing. So having Poison actually increases your attack power even further, which is fantastic, and it's easier to apply to your enemy compared to Rot, because you'll probably kill your enemy before you actually affect them with Rot. Overall, it's a very fun, interesting, exciting, heavy, smacking build that feels good when you smash an enemy's face into the floor, but it does have its weaknesses and it can be quite slow. That's why I recommend using it with secondary weapons to back it up when it feels a bit too slow and you need something a little faster. But I hope you guys enjoyed this build, I hope you try it out, and thank you so much for watching.